Okay, good morning to all of you. I welcome you to this RDBMS class. In today's class, we'll be discussing about PLSQL, subprograms, procedures, functions, packages, triggers. And if time permits, we'll be doing a topic known as normalization. So let's have a quick review of our previous class. I hope you can see my screen, you can see the presentation. Abhijit, you can raise your hands if you can see the presentation, please. Okay, thank you. So we discussed in our previous class about cursors. Okay, you can lower your hands, all of you. Thank you. We discussed about cursors in PLSQL. So we know that cursors are Oracle, private SQL areas which are used to execute SQL statements and store information. And it is of two types: implicit and explicit. Implicit cursors, they are declared by PLSQL implicitly, that is automatically, for all DML statements and for single row queries. And explicit cursors are declared explicitly along with other identifiers to be used in a block and manipulated through specific statements. Okay, and these are user defined and they are defined in the declare section of the PLSQL block. And for operations, they are there with the explicit cursors, that is declaring a cursor, opening a cursor, fetching values from a cursor, and closing a cursor. And a declaration, as you remember, the syntax is cursor name is select statement. Open cursor name, fetching values, fetch cursor name into the variable list. And this could be a variable list or it could be a percentage row type variable also. And then closing a cursor is close cursor name. Then with the explicit as well as the implicit cursor attribute, four attributes are there. Percentage is open, percentage not found, percentage found, and percentage row count. And these are invoked by preceding it with the cursor name in case of explicit cursors and preceding by SQL, which is the implicit cursor name for the implicit cursor. We also discussed a cursor for loop in which all the operations of opening, fetching, and close are done automatically. And the cursor for loop variable is like a percentage row type variable. This we discussed in our previous class. Then we also discussed about exception handling. So in PLSQL, a warning or error condition is called an exception. So when an error occurs, an exception is raised, that is the normal execution of the program stops and the control transfers to the exception handling part of the PLSQL block. We have two types of exceptions, predefined and user defined. And predefined exceptions are internally defined by the runtime system and they are raised implicitly. That means you don't need to call them, they'll be called automatically whenever some error occurs. And then exception handlers are there, the exception handling mechanism in PLSQL is simple. The syntax is when some exception identifier you write, then you take some action. Where this exception identifier is the name of any predefined exception in Oracle. And action is any PLSQL block statement terminated by a semicolon. And every exception you see has an error number associated with it. For example, if we talk of the exception 0_divide, it has an exception error number ORA-01476 associated with it. And when others is the handler, when you are not sure of the exception that you are going to encounter, and it should always be the last exception identifier in the PLSQL block and is sure to execute. Some examples of exception identifiers, we discussed them in our previous class also. For example, to_many_rows, this exception is raised when your select into statement outputs multiple rows. And data not found would be when your select into statement does not return a row. Invalid_cursor exception would be when you are using a cursor name which is non-existent. Then we have user defined exceptions, and obviously they need to be first declared in the declare block of the PLSQL section, and it should be raised explicitly by the user in the beginning block. Okay. So in the exception block, you write when user defined exception, then action. Then we started this, the sub programs in PLSQL. I'll just take a quick chat with you guys. First of all, whatever I just reviewed with you, cursors and exception handling, it was a part of your sessional also. So I hope all of you are clear about it. If there are any issues, if you need to ask anything, you can now raise your hands and ask about these things, about cursors, implicit, explicit, and about exception handling, both the predefined and the user-defined exceptions. I'm waiting if there is any issue with this, because we have done it multiple times in our offline classes also, in our online classes also, and it has been a part of your sessional also. So I hope all good with these. Then at the end of our previous lecture, we started discussing sub programs in PLSQL. So I'll be just discussing that with you now again, so that things are clear. Okay. So subprograms, they are the named PLSQL blocks. We had the anonymous blocks. Now we have the named PLSQL blocks that can take parameters. Okay. So we have PLSQL blocks which can take parameters or arguments. And obviously they are stored permanently in your account and can be used any number of times. They are also called stored procedure. For this reason that they are stored in your account, they are also known as stored procedure. Okay, so while you work in the industry, in the multinationals, you know, the standard term for these is SPs, stored procedures. You'll be dealing with a lot of stored procedures when you start working in a company. Now, these stored procedures or sub-programs are of two types. They are, number one is procedures, number two is functions. And a procedure is a sub-program that performs a specific action. Usually, you know, what we do is we relate a procedure to something that performs a specific action, and a function to something which calculates and returns something. Okay. Two ways of calling a procedure is, one, you can call it on the SQL prompt by using the execute statement, EXEC. Or this procedure can also be called from any other PLSQL block also. A procedure has two parts. One is the specification and one is the body. Okay. Let's see the specification. The syntax is here. Create or replace procedure, procedure name. And once again, you can see that the arguments is optional. Okay. The arguments is optional. You may not give an arguments to a procedure. If there are arguments, they should be enclosed in parentheses. Argument has a name, it has a mode, okay, and the data type is also there. So when I declare argument one, I must give its mode and its data type. If the mode is not given, it is assumed to be of type in. So we have three modes: in, out, and in out. When you don't specify a mode, then it is assumed to be of in mode. Okay, and then there is the declarations for this procedure, and we have the begin and the exception and the end. And before the declarations, we don't write the word declare. That is missing here. We don't write the word declare as we write in anonymous block. But before begin, you can make the local declarations for this procedure. Okay. I think till this point we discussed in our previous class. So let's go back and work with some code. Okay. So I can write here create or replace procedure. Okay. Say I'm just taking a procedure without any arguments first. Okay. And then I can put a print statement here. Some statement I can write here. And then I can write here. There is some error here. What's that? Yeah, I think that's right. The mandatory part is begin here. So I've created a procedure. I'm going from a scratch in terms of procedures and functions so that you can pick up the things here. Let me ask Abhijit. Abhijit, unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Abhijit, is this clear how to create a procedure without any
Yes, sir.
arguments?
Yes, sir.
All right, fine. So now the two ways of executing this procedure. Okay, let's do that. One is here itself, just by writing exec followed by the procedure name. Okay, so it should yeah display. So we have not made this parameter as on. Let's server output on. So if I run it again, you can see this procedure created, and then you can see this the welcome message. Okay. Similarly, to run it in a PLSQL block, what I can do is I can create a block, say, and here simply what I can do is I can write begin, and the procedure name is this. Okay, we can do without this also. Let's see if it works. Supposedly it should work. No, there's some problem here. Yeah. We'll see if because it will work in case of a function, but that's it. Okay. So you can call your procedure in two ways. I'm listing both the ways here. You can see one is using the execute statement like I've done here, execute followed by the procedure name. And one is calling this procedure in a PLSQL block. Okay, so that's what we were discussing here, that this can be, it can be called at the SQL prompt using the execute statement, and it can be called from any other PLSQL block also. Okay, right. So let's go back to our SQL prompt. Let me now start with the function. The syntax of the procedure and function is almost the same with just one little change. So let's see that change first. Okay, let's see it here. So the change is here, only this one, return data type, that's it. So when you go with the same thing, create or replace function, function name, just like you go with create or replace procedure, procedure name, everything else is same. You see, before is, in case of function, you specify the return type of the function. So return data type is. That is the only change here. Okay, that's one. That is, a function has a return statement in its syntax, return data type. And then a function can be called from a PLSQL block only. It cannot be called or invoked with a exec or execute statement. So let's go to our SQL prompt and let's create one function. Say maybe I can pick up some stored procedure here. Let's see if we have something here. Scripts. Need to check. Just a second. We have some scripts here. Okay, we have fun sort of thing. Let's call it here. I've written some functions so that we can save time. On the D drive, we have scripts and we have fun1. Yeah. Okay. So this is the first example of a function. It's a function to print area of a rectangle. Okay. So like you've done functions in C and C++ and in Python also you're learning. So we have a create or replace function. Say the name of the function is area. Two arguments are there. I'll just add something to these. I'll just write here in so that it is clear to you. Okay. I can write here in. So whether you write in or not, they are by default of type in. That is the argument mode. I'll discuss out and in out also today. Okay. Then you see the syntax here. You just make it like this: return number. That is the additional thing in case of a function. I'll just maximize this. And then I've taken a local variable AR to specify area. Okay. AR. Okay. And then AR is L star B and I'm returning AR. I think this is a normal functions that you write in any language. Just see the syntax here. Create or replace function, function name, the arguments, I've also mentioned the type of the argument. So it could be in, out, or in, out. So if it is not written, then it is by default taken as in. Okay. And so if I run this now, so I can just get it from here. It will say function created. Now this function has been created. So whenever I invoke this function area, it is in my account. So in whatever PLSQL block I write it, it would be invoked. So let me go to my PLSQL block that I created just RT. Yeah. And here what I can do is I can simply write, say, I can print whatever this function returns. I'll call it like this, then I'll pipe it with this function. I'm passing 10 comma 10. I hope it's clear. I've just called this function in my print statement and passing 10 and 10 as the argument. So if I run it, so can somebody tell me what would be the output now? You can see the area function. You can see the calling function in the block PLSQL block RT. I'm calling this function. So what would be the output of this? Raise your hands to answer this question, please. What would be the output? This question is simple. Okay, let's ask Ankit Prakash. Yes, Ankit, unmute yourself, please.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Ankit, what is the output of this code that you see on screen?
Sir, that will represent the area.
Yeah, but what would be the output when I run it?
100.
Go to run
100.
it. Yeah. So you've taken
100.
a bit too long to give the answer, and I don't know why you people were hesitant to raise your hands. You've been doing this sort of programming in C, C++ for long. So this is the first example of this area. Thank you, Ankit. Okay, let's take another example. Let's take this fun2 example. Okay, this is interesting. See, what I've done here is I'll just add a comment to it to calculate the increased salary of an employee. Okay. See, what I've done here is I've created a function rev. Suppose we are reviewing the salary of employees. So this function would take the employee number and would tell it's reviewed or the renewed or the new salary. Okay. So I must pass the employee number to this. Okay. And it will first check the salary of the employee, whether the employee is present or not. So if salary is found, then based on certain conditions, it will predict the new salary. You can see the conditions here, that if salary is less than 1000, then he gets a 30% increase. If it is between greater than 1000, greater than equal to 1000 and less than 2000, then a 20% increase, otherwise a 15% increase. And this would return the end salary. And obviously we are using a select into statement, so it might give us, usually when we are taking a primary key here, it would either give us a single row or 0 rows. So I'm checking it with when no underscore data underscore found. There could be a scenario also where the employee is not having any salary. So I'll ask you people how to manage that with this. So kindly have a good look at this function. Okay. I've taken a variable s to get the salary, see with the percentage type declaration, and a new salary to calculate the new salary. And the new salary, if calculated, is returned also. Okay. So if what this function is doing, if it is clear to all of you, you can give me a raised hand, all of you. If you are clear that what we are doing with this function, what are we calculating with this function? If it is clear, kindly give me a raised hand. Okay, thank you. So let's run this function now. I'll go slow with these because once you understand this, then packages and triggers would be a much easier option for you to work with. Okay. All right, I'm going to run it now. I'll just get it first for you, and then I'll run. So it says function created. You can see the function on screen, please, once again. I'm creating a function with the name as rev. Okay. Say for reviewed salary, it takes an employee number as the argument. Okay. And returns a number data type. So it will be returning the new salary of the employee. So for that, I pick up the existing salary in a variable S and the new salary in the variable NSAL. Then I pick up the current salary of the employee based on its employee number. I get it into the variable S. Then I check the conditions that if S is less than 1000, then 30%, 20%, 15%. You understand all these things. And then whatever new salary is calculated, it is returned. Now the problem is what sort of errors can come. We can have a salary, uh, salary maybe an employee is not existing. So for that, it would not return anything, a zero row. So then it would be handling this when no data found. And there could be some other error also. So for any other error, I picked this when others. Okay. And you remember this function SQL errm. This will display the error number as well as the error message. Okay. So let's run this now. Function has been created. Let's run this. Obviously, we need to do it in some PLSQL block. We can call a function in a PLSQL block. So first, uh, let's just check the current employees, and this is the so these are the employees. Everybody is having salary 1000. No problem. We'll first, yeah, Ajax is having a null salary. Remember that. So let's review the salary. Yeah, we can make some changes so that it's clear. Update m set sal equal to, make it 1500, where department number equal to 20. Okay, so if we just, now we have some change. Yeah, I'm going to review the salary of Smith. Remember his salary is 1500. Okay, so I'll be asking you what the salary would be. Okay, I'll show you the program also side by side so that you can just list the program here. Yeah, this is the function, and I'll just now open this. I'll write here new salary. Yes, and I'll call this function rev. So I'm reviewing the salary of employee number 7788. Remember, okay. Let's see what is the current salary of 7788. Can you see, all of you? Scott is having a salary of 1500. Okay. So can you tell me what his new salary would be? The code is there in front of you. I'm giving you 2 minutes time. 7788 employees having a salary of 1500. So what would be his new salary? You can raise your hands once you've finished calculating. The code is in front of you. It should be running this else if S greater than 1000 and less than 2000. So a 20% increase. You're taking too long to answer this question, I suppose. Okay. Sejal is quick to answer. Yes, Sejal.
Sir, the salary will be 1800.
1800. Okay, let's check. Let's check. Let's run that code that we have written for employee 7788. So the new salary is 1800. Good answer, Sejal. Okay. So how our program works? This function, it gets an argument 7788. It fetches the salary into S. This else if becomes true. New sal becomes the current sal, that is 1500 plus 20% of 1500, that is 300. So 1800 is returned. There is no error, so exception handling block does not run. Okay. I'll be asking another question now. I'm going to modify this now. Get RT. Okay. Let's just make it employee number 21. Okay. Now I'm going to review salary for employee number 21. You can see the code now, and you can also see that 21 currently is having no salary. Okay, 21 currently is having no salary. So look at the code and tell me what will happen. Raise your hands once again if you need to answer this question. Now we are okay. Prince wants to answer. Very good. Sejal again. Yeah, more people should raise hands. Abhijit also. Very good. So let's ask Prince. Yes, Prince. Ravi has also raised hand.
Sir, it will go in exception block, and it will be matched with no data found.
Okay. Are you sure about it?
Uh, I'm
No,
guessing.
no data found would be when there is no employee with employee number 21, but there is an employee 21 Ajax.
Oh, okay, sir. I was thinking about the salary, sir. Salary will not get found.
Salary won't be found. So if salary is not found, then this no data is not raised
Okay,
because this is when
then it will go
yeah,
in others when
yeah,
others.
it will go in when others and it will display error messages. Then whatever is the error message, let's see what is the error message here. Okay, let's see the error message here. Okay, so you see it does not go to anything because that is not an error. Kindly see that this is not an error, only that the salary is null. Okay, the salary is, see what happens here is, look here all of you, s gets a value null here. Is that fine? Okay, so there is no null is not matched with anything. Okay, so sal is obviously blank, so it says new salary is and nothing is there. So in this case, you see, in problems like this, we must add our own exception. Okay, we must add our own exception. I'm going to do that. Prince, I'll come back to you. I'm going to add my own exception. We did it in the previous class, if you all remember. I'm going to do it again. Okay, we have this. I'll add my own exception. Can you look carefully, all of you? I'll declare my own exception that when salary is missing. So I'm giving it a name as salary missing, right? And I am telling that this is an exception that I'm creating on my own. So when I select sal here, and if I write if s is null, then what I do is I raise sal underscore missing. Okay, and then obviously I write here n if. That is the syntax for this. So here I have declared an exception with the name as sal underscore missing. If S is null, that is if null salary is there, so I raise this exception. And obviously I need to handle it here. I'll do it here, no problems. I'll do it here. Okay. So when just write here sal underscore missing, then I can give employee number ENO as null salary. See this. Okay, now when a problem occurs here, the salary is null, this would simply raise this exception. It will jump here, will match with this, and will print employee number this as null salary. Let's run it. You can first view it on screen. Okay, function is created, and then we can get RT. I think that is the same one. So now it will give you, yeah. Okay, okay. Again, it has, yeah. So you see, when others is also executed here. So when your own exception is raised, it was raised, and then when others has also taken place. Remember this, when your user defined exception is occurring, okay, here, then when others is also there, and it tells you, because you see our function did not return any value here. Okay. So how we can handle it? Can somebody suggest how we can handle this thing that this should not occur? Maybe we can have a return 0. Let's try it. But otherwise, this is perfectly fine. The answer. There's no problem with this. No need to worry about this answer. This is perfectly fine. But let's try once so that if we can see here, we can have an executable statement here. Uh, Maybe something of this sort. Not sure whether it will work or not. If it doesn't, then it's fine. There's no problem. Okay. It seems it's okay. We have added this return 0. Now let's run that RT. Yeah. Employee number 21 has null salary and say new salary is 0. That is also taking place. Where is that? Where is that? Employee number 21 has null salary. That is the message that we give. And obviously, when the function is returning here, you see, the function is returning here. So the new salary is 0. This function called rev21, it returns a 0. Okay. So that we bypass this, because if we are making our own exception work here, then it should not be taking this when others. Okay. And when others occurred, because your return statement is not encountered. Okay. And you said that this function would return a number value, like you mentioned here. Okay, so this one example is very good to understand your exception handling also, to understand your function also. Okay, so if there is any problems, you can ask. If there is any problem, Prince, you've raised your hand. If it is by chance, you can lower it. Okay. So if you have any problems with the function or the procedure that we have discussed, how they should be called, how the exception handling should be there. So we can have so many problems with this. We'll discuss a few problems in our afternoon class today. I'll tell you the time once I end this class. I'll tell you the 1 hour problems class in the afternoon. Okay. So let's now move ahead and work with this argument modes. Okay. Now listen very carefully. This is very easy, very simple. Okay. This feature, but you should be very clear about it, how it works. Okay. So I told you there are 3 argument modes: in, out, and in, out. Okay. So in is by default. Whenever you're passing parameters to your function or your procedure, the argument type is in. And within your subprogram, that is within your procedure or function, the in parameter acts like a constant which cannot be modified. Keep this thing in mind, right? Then the out parameter, it lets you return values to the calling block. Okay. So with the help of this, you can return multiple values from your function or from your procedure. Usually you see a function returns only one value. In case of PLSQL, a PLSQL function returns only one value per call. In your C++ also, functions, they return one value per call. In Python, a function can return any number of values per call. That is the difference. I think you must have learned it in Python, that Python can return infinite number of values. Whenever you call a function, it can return multiple or infinite values, as many values as you wish. And if you want your variable that it should be passed as in variable, and also it should behave like an out variable, then you can declare it as in out. Okay. So you can just read here, the 3 parameters can be used with any subprogram, a procedure or a function. Okay. Now let's see the in mode. That is the default mode. Okay. And the actual parameter which you pass, it cannot be assigned a value. It is a constant. Okay. Then there are some examples. I take my own examples. Okay. Then there is an out mode which can be used to return the values. And then we have this in out mode which can be used for both the purposes. So let me just take a few examples for this before we start discussing the stored packages. Okay. So let's go to our scripts folder, whether we have something here. Need to see it. Okay. Just a second. So let's see the examples here. Let's say test 1. Let's see what it is. Yeah. So you see a create or replace function. Now look carefully, you can note it down also, or you can watch it later in the video, but understand it right now. I'm taking a function test1 with an argument a of number type, and it is returning something. So can somebody just raise their hands? Let's see. Yeah, Bharat, kindly unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Bharat, what this function is doing and what is the mode of the argument?
Sir, mode is in mode.
Yeah, mode is in mode. Okay. So we discussed one thing here. If you just look at this, uh, let's go to the beginning of this in mode here. Okay. In the subprogram, the in parameter acts like a constant. Therefore, it cannot be modified. Okay. Let's check this thing, Bharat. Okay.
Yes.
Where is that code? Yeah. So obviously it is returning the cube of A, right? Whatever argument we pass to test1, it will return its cube. Okay. So let's run it. बिना list के run कर रहे हैं. We have function created. So let's go to our default this thing, and let me just write here. Cube is function name is, what is the function name? Test है क्या? Let's see. Forgot the function. Just a second. Test1. Okay. So let's get this. I'm calling this test1 function and passing 2 to it. So it will return the cube of 2, right?
Yes,
so
sir.
Let's run it. So I think it will give you cube is 8. Now what I want to discuss with you is what is the meaning that inside the subprogram it behaves like a constant. That means if I just try to write something like this, a colon equal to a star star 3. This is a perfectly valid statement, I suppose. What I'm doing is to this in argument a, I'm assigning the cube of a, right? So
Yes, sir.
a should have the value as 8, and I'm returning it. But we studied that this variable a should not be, it should be a constant within your program. It cannot be assigned any value. So let's see whether we have some error while we create this function. Look carefully, all of you. So we have function created with errors. So let's see the errors. Okay. So there's some problem before return. Yeah. Let's first rectify that problem that I can see there is that I have not put a semicolon here. Maybe that error it is telling, right? You see, while learning these things, you need to be patient. You need to check each and everything very carefully. Again, there are errors. Okay, let's see. Now you can see expression A cannot be used as an assignment target. So that is what we learned in our PDF. You can see here that within the subprogram, the in parameter acts like a constant and it cannot be modified. That is the first property of this in parameter. It is simply passed to your subprogram. So when you pass A, you cannot modify its value because A should remain constant within your subprogram. Is that clear, Bharat? Bharat is not with me. So long as I ask you to, talk to me, then you should not. Bharat, unmute yourself. Don't mute yourself before I ask you.
Okay, sir.
Bharat, is this clear now?
Yes, sir.
That the in mode argument is a constant. It cannot be assigned a value within the subprogram, right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. You can mute yourself now.
Okay, sir.
Let's now see the out variable. For that, I'll take another this thing. See this now very carefully. Very important for you to understand. The second example, I have created a function test2, okay, where I've taken argument A as in and argument B as out. So I told you that a PLSQL function can return only one value per call. But I want to return the square of A as well as the cube of A through my this function test2. So one value I'll return with the return statement. The second value I'll return with the out variable. Okay. The second value I'll return with the out variable. So B is an out variable. Okay. So see here, when I call this function, I'll pass the value of A. I'll pass the value of A, and the return S value and the value of B would be returned when I call this function test2. Okay, fine. So let's see how it works. I'll show you it's working. First, I think it's clear. This function is calculating the square of A and the cube of A. Okay, and you can see that your A is an in argument. It is passed to this function, and B is an out argument. So an out argument can be assigned a value which the function returns. Okay. If it is clear what I'm telling you, you can give me a raised hand because it could be a bit confusing in the beginning. An out variable is used to return value. Return statement returns one value only. If you need to return multiple values per function call, then you can take the help of out variable. Okay. So let's compile this. I will give you time to ask your problems, don't worry. So this function is created. Remember, the function name is test2. Okay, function name is test2. So I need to call this function test2. For this, I'll open this code. Okay, look carefully at this code, and I'm calling. Okay, I'll call the relevant parts for you. I'll just remove it from here. I will need this. Yeah. Yeah. So test2 is a function that returns the square of the given number and an out variable which returns cube. I hope you remember this. This test2 has two arguments, A and B. A is passed. So to the in value, you pass a value. In is going to receive. And for an out value, you take another variable which will receive the value returned by the variable B. That's always how you call whenever you have an out variable in your function. So when I call this function test2, 5 is passed to the function, and a return statement will return the value, and the value of B would be there in X. So if I print X here, okay, so it would be the cube. Okay, so I can write here cube is. Okay, and obviously the return statement is returning the square, so I'm writing here square is. And see, I'm calling this function test2. And since I'm using a variable X here, it needs to be declared here. Okay. I won't run it before I discuss with you. I'll first list it, okay, so that the things are clear to you. Both the listings are there on the screen. Kindly have a look now. Please be careful in this. I'm calling this function test2. Look here, test2. Okay. It has two arguments, an in argument and an out argument. Okay. I could have passed something to this B also. Okay. So I could take the value of X and pass there also. But right now I'm just passing. I'm calling it like with 5 comma X. So 5 is passed to A and X is mapped with B. So when I return from this function, it will return the value of S, which would be printed with this 6 number dbms underscore output dot put underscore 9, and the value of B would be returned automatically to its mapped variable X. So it will print square is 25, cube is 125. Okay, let's run it. You can see it. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, you can ask please regarding this out variable. Code is there in front of you. It's very simple to understand that whenever you have an out variable, you must use a variable name here. Here, the variable x is not having any value, no problem. It can have value also. So that value would be passed to b. And whatever is the changed value of b here would be returned back to x. Okay, is it fine? All right. Let's see now another example. Let's see now another example. Yeah, should be of the in out, I think. So I've taken a as an in out variable. See, it's simple. A can both be used for passing as well as returning values. Okay, so you see here a is used for passing as well as returning values, right? So let's call this. I'll run this for you so that you can understand. The function is created. Let's use that function check. Let's use it for test 3 now. Okay, so I'm using y, then I'm using y colon equal to ampersand y, then I can pass it to test 3 as y, and I can I won't use any message here so that I think this should work. I'm listing all the things for you now. See now, be very careful with the last example here. I have this function test3 which has got an in-out argument here. In-out means that a can pass a value to the function and it can also bring back value from a function. Okay, and it is returning a character value. Okay, it is returning simply a message, say hello, and obviously whatever is the value of a, it would also be returned. Okay, now see where I'm calling it with test3y, and y I will input here. Okay, so y is passed to a. Okay, its cube would be calculated. This function would return two values. One is the value hello, and the second one is the cube of whatever y was sent, and it would be received back in this variable y. Okay, so if I ask somebody, if I pass the value as 5, what is the answer? Can you give me an answer for this? I'm calling this function test3 with the value as 5. Okay, and this is the function here, test3. Okay, so can you raise hands to give? Okay, Prince wants to answer. Yes, Prince. Abhijit has also raised hand. Ankit Prakash also. Yes, Prince, you can answer.
So it is returning actually hello to, so I guess hello will be printed along.
Okay, it is returning hello. Now look carefully. I'm calling here test3. Okay, let's ask somebody else. Ravi Kumar can answer. Abhijit can answer.
So hello and 125, sir.
Hello and 125. Who was answered this? Ravi?
No, sir,
No,
Abhijit.
Abhijit. Okay. So you can see hello and 125. And since we used an ampersand for input, it is getting this old and new. So you can just make it go away with this set value of enter value for y. Okay. So when we call it from here, this y, okay, we are calling test3 function by passing it the value of y. I told you that y can also carry value. So y carries value to this a. Okay, a receives the value 5. The value of a is modified because it is of type in out. So a becomes 125, and this function returns hello. And a has to go back because it is an in out variable. It will go back to the calling point. So it goes back to the calling point, and whatever variable was used to invoke A gets the value of A as 125 back in it. That is the value in the variable Y. That is why it is answered. So I think I have discussed in detail with you guys, this in, out and in out variables. So if you have any discussions, you can ask. If you have anything to discuss, you can watch this video again and work with SQL. I would suggest that. Otherwise, I think the idea is clear that in variable is the usual style of passing arguments to a function. Out variable is which can carry value, which can be passed value and returns back value also. And in out can do both. Okay, fine. So, and anything that you need to ask in this, you can please ask now. Some examples of this I'll do in the afternoon session with you in the problems section today. Any question? Like there are so many students. I hope all of you are listening. Okay. Rhythm, can you unmute yourself?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Rhythm, any problems in whatever we have discussed today?
No, sir. All clear.
Okay. Rupali, you can unmute yourself. Rupali, you can unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Rupali, all clear?
Yes, sir.
You can watch this video again today. I'll upload it after the class and work out all these problems, because that is the only good thing that you have in this paper. The RDBMS theory, I think you will be all picking up. I'm sure about it. Only thing you need to work with this PLSQL codes.
Okay,
All
sir.
right. Salil Chandan, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, sir.
Salil, all clear?
Yes, sir. All clear.
Okay, fine. So let's now move ahead. Thank you very much, all of you. Let's move to the next part of our lecture. I would discuss a topic of normalization with you now. Okay, I'll just because too much of PLSQL in one day would not be good. So packages and triggers for the next class. We'll finish PLSQL in our next class. Then what you can do is you can just go through all the videos of PLSQL that I'll be putting on, these class lectures. So anybody can learn PLSQL very easily, no problems. Once you understand how to do programming, PLSQL is very easy, right? So we have a break of 5 minutes and then we'll discuss an important topic of normalization. Okay. So welcome back after a 2 minutes break. So I'll be now discussing the topic of normalization with you. A very important topic, both from the viewpoint of database design and very useful for your projects while you are creating your databases, your tables, the relationships, and you must use normalized databases for your projects. So the concept of normalization we discuss now. We'll discuss it and then you can ask your problems. So normalization is design. Remember, this is very important. So kindly, if you need to note down a few things, you can do that. Normalization is a designing technique that is widely used as a guide in designing relational databases. So it's a design technique which is used to design your relations or your databases. And basically, it is a process of decomposing or splitting a relation into relations with fewer attributes by minimizing the redundancy of data and minimizing insertion, deletion, and updation anomalies. Okay. So I'll just break this here so that the things are clear for you. Process of decomposing or splitting. That is, you split or decompose your bigger relation into simpler, smaller relations having fewer attributes and which minimizes the redundancy of data. Redundancy means unnecessary repetition of data. And also it minimizes the problems or the anomalies of insertion, deletion, and updation. That is the basic idea behind the study of normalization. And we also know that the relations which have fewer attributes, they possess all the desirable properties. So normalization can be defined as a step-by-step reversible process. So by reversible, we means that if we are splitting a bigger table into smaller tables, then those tables can be combined or joined together to get back the original bigger relation. So it is a step-by-step reversible process of transforming an unnormalized relation into relations with progressively simpler structures. Since this process is reversible, so no information is lost in transformation. Okay, so there's no problem, there's no information lost while you are performing normalization on tables. Okay, so we normalize our tables because of the following reasons. Because we want to minimize data redundancy, we want to make our database structure flexible, and we want to make the data to be consistent throughout the database. That is, it should not suffer with the following anomalies. So we have discussed these anomalies before also while we were studying our physical models, the relational, hierarchical, and the network models. We did discuss the anomalies of insert, delete, and update. Okay, so what is the insert anomaly? Insert anomaly is that due to lack of data, okay, we should not be inserting null values in keys. Okay, like where we require values but the values are not possible. Okay, then update anomaly is due to data redundancy, that is multiple occurrences of the same values in a column. Then we have some update anomaly problem, that the updation is done at certain places and it remains undone at certain places. And this can lead to inefficient data. And deletion anomaly is like if we delete something and we have some loss of information, then that is also not desirable. Okay. So this is the idea behind normalization. Okay. Then what are the advantages of normalization? We will first study the theoretical part and then we'll discuss the technicality of normalization. It's a long topic. Let's see how much we can finish today. So the advantages of normalization, it gives us more efficient data structures. It avoids redundant fields or columns. The data structure is also more flexible, okay, that we can do modifications, additions, deletions easily. And it ensures that distinct tables exist when necessary. So this point is very important. This could be like normally we have some redundancy in our tables. Some redundancy is there. We cannot eliminate redundancy. But with normalization, we can reduce redundancy to a great extent. So it will ensure that distinct tables exist wherever it is necessary. We won't have duplication or redundancy of data, but wherever duplication or redundancy is required would be there. Okay. And then this is an easier to maintain data structure, minimizes data duplication, and it's close to the modeling of real world entities. Whatever we have the things in the real world for which we need to create databases, then the modeling is easier with the concept of normalization. Then we have a few disadvantages also of normalization. Once you see, there are various forms of normalization. We have the first normal form, the second normal form, like this. So as you go towards higher normal forms, then the performance degrades. That is, it becomes difficult to maintain the performance of your relations. And the second disadvantage is that it is also very time consuming and a difficult process, okay, in normalizing relations of higher degree. Okay. And careless decomposition may lead to bad design, which may lead to serious problems. If you're not smart enough to decompose your relations into simpler relations, then it can lead to bad design of the database, which may lead to serious problems. So let me just have a quick discussion with you guys. Anything that you need to know about normalization? We are going to study how normalization is done, but before that, we must be clear that what normalization is, what advantages it gives us, what are its disadvantages, okay, and why we should be doing normalization. If that is clear, I think we can move ahead. Or if you need to discuss something, you can raise your hands, please. Yeah, I'm waiting. You can raise your hands, please. All right, all clear. Now the technical part begins. We'll be first studying the first normal form. What I'll do is I'll try and finish normal forms 1, 2, and 3 with you today, right? So let's discuss the first normal form. Every normal form has got some statement with it, some rules. Okay. And if your relation follows those rules, we say that the relation is in first normal form. If it does not follow those norms, we say it is not in that particular form. Okay, so let's discuss the first normal form, also called as 1NF. Okay, first normal form, or we also call it 1NF. Now, a relation is said to be in 1NF if it follows the rules. Number one, all the primary key attributes are defined. That is, if a relation has a primary key attribute defined, we say it is good. It is going towards first normal form. Second important thing is there are no repeating groups in the table. I'll discuss with you what a repeating group is. And then the third one is that all the remaining attributes should be dependent on the primary key. So for example, if we take the case of a student entity, a student table, then obviously roll number is the primary key, it is defined, and all other things, all other attributes, they depend on the primary key. So we can safely say that the student relation is in 1NF or first normal form. So this repeating group means that every column, every row column intersection should have unique values. We should not be having multiple values at row column intersection. So let's understand this with this example. Okay, we have this representation of student. Okay, we have a student ID, we have student name, and then we have the record of the student marks. So you see, student ID is one column, student name is one column, record is one column, which is further split up into subject and marks. Okay, so this subject is computer, marks is 72. So this representation is not in 1NF, simply because every row column intersection is not having unique values. This row column intersection, unique value, unique value. This has got multiple values. Okay, this row column intersection has got multiple values. So we say that there are repeating groups in this. There are repeating groups. There should not be any repeating groups in the table. So my question to you is how we can bring this representation into 1NF. You can raise your hands to answer this question. I've told you the problem. Okay. Now suggest a way in which I can bring this representation of student into a 1NF form, a first normalized form. Raise your hands to answer this question. Suggest me what I should do so that this comes into a normalized form and obeys the first normal form. First normal form, of course, is primary key should be there. All attributes should be dependent on the primary key. And there are no repeating groups in the table means that every row column intersection has unique values, not multiple values. So can you suggest me how to bring it into 1NF? I'm expecting an answer from you on this. Okay, Sejal wants to answer. Yes, Sejal.
Sir, firstly, can you please explain again that what does repeating groups in table mean?
Repeating group means that every row column intersection should have unique values, not multiple values. You see this row column intersection, can you see? 2407 is the student ID, Ranjit is the name. Now there should be a single value here. Okay, but we are having three values here for Ranjit. For subject computer 72, economics 65, math 79. This is what repeating group says. That every row column intersection should have a single value. Can you modify this so that it obeys that second point? You should be able to. Yeah.
Yes, sir, मतलब हमें एक single subject के लिए करना होगा.
अब बताइए कैसे करेंगे?
सर बट उसमें फिर लेकिन नेम और स्टूडेंट आईडी रिपीट होगी ना?
होगी, yes, that's true. होगी.
Yes.
बिल्कुल ठीक है. Your answer is perfectly correct. So one way, as Sejal has suggested, is that we go like this. Look on screen. 247 Ranjit computer 72. Again 247 Ranjit economics 65. 2407 Ranjit maths 79. This is known. This technique is known as flattening the table. Okay. So two approaches are there to bring this unnormalized student table into a normalized one. One is by flattening the table. So Sejal, what is the problem with flattening?
सर देयर विल बी मतलब वो रिपीट हो जाएंगे जैसे स्टूडेंट आईडी और वो नेम बार-बार रिपीट हो रहे हैं.
Okay, Simran wants to answer. Your answer is correct, Sejal. Perfectly fine. Yes, Simran. Simran, you raised your hand. Can you raise it again? Yeah. Unmute yourself, Simran. Yes, Simran, go ahead. Please ask your question. Simran, you're not audible. Okay. So I'll show you what it looks like, a flat table. Look at this. This representation was here, not in 1NF. This representation here is in 1NF. Can you see all of you? So the problem here in this flat student table is that this fact that 2407 is Ranjit, 2407 is Ranjit, 2407 is Ranjit is redundant, you know, it's a lot of redundancy. So if Ranjit is picking up 3 subjects and there are 1000 students, we'll have 3000 rows in this table. Simran, if you wish, you can speak, but you're not audible. Okay. Sejal, can you raise your hand, please, so that we can have a discussion? Yes, Sejal. Sejal, can you see the problem now?
Yes, sir.
We had this unnormalized table because the row column intersection were having multiple values. We converted it into a flat student table. This is known as flattening of the table. So by flattening, it obeys all the 3 rules, but this is not a suitable way of representing this because it is giving us a lot of redundancy. Sejal, can you suggest any other way of bringing it into 1NF? I don't want to use these flattening, the flattening of the table.
Sir, can we use subject as a primary key?
No, subject can never be a primary key.
Sir, I don't know the other way then.
No, no, no. You must try. See what the technique is. That's where we apply our mind. All of you apply your minds, please. See what is this. I've highlighted this for you. You need to do this. Got it? You need to split this student table so that it becomes a normalized table. That is what normalization does. So can you do some splitting now? Sejal, you can try, and rest. Somebody can raise their hands, please. We can split this one table into 2 tables so that it comes into one normal form.
Sir, can you please show the table again?
Yeah. This one or the flat one? Yeah. Should be simple, should not be difficult at all. I told you redundancy cannot be eliminated, but it can be reduced.
Sir,
Yeah.
we can make 2 different tables for the students.
Right, go ahead.
Sir, there will be 2 tables, one for Ranjit and other for Anurag.
No. It's not like this. Okay. Okay, one final chance if somebody wants to try. Simran, you can again unmute yourself and speak if you wish to answer. I've given you a chance to unmute yourself. Simran is having problems. Okay, we have we have 2 Simrans now. Okay, yes, Simran, using some other device. No, we are not getting a response. Okay, so look on screen, all of you. Just lower your hands, please. 2 ways to achieve the first normal form. First one is to make this table into a flat student table. Okay, this is the flat student table. Okay, fine. And then the second way is to decompose the original relation into 2 relations, stu details and stu performance. Look very carefully this technique. You will be applying it a lot in your projects. Stu details and stu performance. Okay. See, simple stu details. Student ID. There are only 2 students. Okay. So their ID and name, one table, and their performance in the other table. See now what is repeated, only the student ID. So here this is the primary key, student ID. This is the foreign key. I hope clear now. Now this relation is normalized. It will give you good performance. It will ease out your, So whenever you need to add some student performance, the subject and marks, just put his roll number, okay? And whenever you want to see that what roll number is this student, you pick up the name from this by joining these two tables. So whatever we learned in our database management system, in our SQL, the same things are here. So a table has been split up, and whenever we need to join them, we can join. You know the concept of join, okay? Sejal, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, sir.
Sejal, do you understand now how to split the tables?
Yes.
It is split, always remember it is split on the basis of the primary key.
Okay, sir.
So we have a primary key and one like this. So now it looks a good table. There is no repetition at all, you can see. The only thing that is being repeated minimally is the student roll number. And since it is a key, it can be repeated as a foreign key.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so this is our first normal form. So see the relations, they are decomposed. The relation is decomposed according to the following rules. One of the relation consists of the primary key of the original table and non-repeating attributes of the original table. Very important, you see concept. See, what is repeating here? What I said here in this point. Yeah, there are no repeating groups in the table. So here, these are the repeating groups. The subject, computer, here also the subject, computer, or Punjabi, it will come in one way or the other. The student name remains the same. Okay, so this ID, primary key, and this name in one table, that is the split technique, and the repeating groups in the other table, and they are associated with the student ID, which is the foreign key. I think this is clear to all of you, how this split has been done. The other relation consists of the copy of the primary key of the original table and all the repeating attributes of the original table, that is subject, marks, etc. And with practice, you can, you can learn how to do all these things. Sejal, is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
What about the rest of you? Are you listening or is it lunchtime? If you're listening and if you've understood first normal form, you can raise your hands, all of you. And if there is anything to ask, you can ask also. But this technique you will learn with practice. And I'll give you some tables to, decompose, and you will learn how to do it. Okay. Let's move ahead now. Another normal form, you can lower your hands, all of you, thank you. The second normal form we'll be discussing now. Okay, and it is based on the concept of functional dependency. The first three normal forms, in fact, the first normal form also, the second normal form, and the third normal form, all of them are based on the concept of functional dependency. I told you here that the third property is all attributes are dependent on the primary key. Okay, so this is known as functional dependency. For them to function, they must be dependent on the primary key. So let's understand this concept of functional dependency also. Okay, note it very carefully. Functional dependency is the basis for first three normal forms, and it is a consequence of the interrelationships among attributes of a relation represented by some link or association. Now the definition. An attribute Y of a relation R is said to be functionally dependent upon attribute X of relation R if and only if for each value of X in R has associated with it only one value of Y in R at a given time and is represented as X this Y. Okay, so wherever the arrow is the dependent this thing. So this X hyphen arrow Y, it means that Y is dependent on X. Y is functionally dependent on X. And here X attribute is known as the determinant and Y is known as determined. Okay, so Y is determined from X. Y is dependent on X. Y is functionally dependent on X. Is it clear? If it is clear, give me a quick raised hand so that we can move ahead. So see the student table now. We have an example of a student table where we have roll number, student name, course, student phone, city. See the dependencies. Student name is dependent on roll number. Student phone is dependent on roll number. Course is dependent on roll number. City is dependent on roll number. So can you say that this table is in first normal form? Subia, can you raise your hands, please? Subia, you raised your hand.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Subia, can you tell me whether this particular table in front of you on screen is in first normal form or not? It is in first normal form because we have a primary key, roll number, and we don't have multiple or repeating groups. Every row column intersection has got a single value. Okay, and all these columns, student name, course, student phone, city, they are all dependent on this primary key, roll number, and it is depicted like this. Okay, जिसकी तरफ arrow है, that is the dependent one. So student name is dependent on roll number, student phone is dependent on roll number, and so on. This is known as functional dependence. Okay, clear, Subia? Subia, is it clear? Okay, fine. Then there is something known as a fully functional dependency, very important concept. So this fully functional dependency, see, the functional dependency is a part of the first normal form. Okay, functional dependency relates to first normal form. The fully functional dependency comes when you have your primary key as a composite key. That is, two or more keys are there to make the primary key. Then the concept of fully functional dependency comes. Okay, now listen carefully the definition and then we'll have the example. An attribute y in a relation R is fully functionally dependent on an attribute x of relation R if it is functionally dependent on x and not dependent on any subset of x. In other words, fully functional dependency means that when the primary key is composite, okay, so this FFD, fully functional dependency, this comes into picture when your primary key is a composite key. That is, it is composed of two or more columns. Okay, then it must be identified, your primary key must be identified by the entire key and not by some of the attributes that make up the primary key. Let's see how. This relation we have seen before also, if you remember, when we were discussing keys. So I need some people to join me in some discussion for the next 10 minutes. What do you think of this table? What is the primary key? It's written on screen already. What is the primary key? Okay, Prince wants to answer. Abhijit also. Only two students. More students to come in, please. नहीं तो ये फिर आपसे होगा नहीं. Sejal has already answered so many times. So let's ask Abhijit. Yes, Abhijit.
So order number, sir.
Order number is what?
Primary key, sir.
Only order number?
And B name, sir.
And B name. Okay. So here one attribute is not sufficient to make the primary key. So we say order number and B name together are what? The primary key. Okay. Fine. So Abhijit, whether this relation is going to give us problems, yes or no? Can you tell me the other dependencies, Abhijit?
Sir,
Order number and book name, you see,
yes, sir.
it is a composite primary key. Okay. And we learned that the remaining keys, the remaining fields, quantity and book price, they should be dependent on the primary key.
Primary key.
Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Are they dependent entirely on the primary key? What is the scenario? You can raise hands if you want to join in the discussion. My question is, order number and book name is the primary key, is a composite key. The combination is a primary key. So the remaining columns in the table, that is the quantity and the book price, they should be dependent totally on this composite primary key. Okay. Are they totally dependent on this primary key? Yes or no, Abhijit?
Sir, they are totally dependent, sir.
Okay. Any other answer? You can try. You see, the book price, listen Abhijit very carefully. The book
Yes.
price, is it dependent on the order number?
No, sir.
The price of the book is dependent on the book name.
On B name, sir.
Yeah, okay. Similarly, the quantity.
Dependency, sir. Yes,
है ना? So,
Yes.
so these two things, you see, the book price is dependent on book name only.
yes,
Okay, and that means the fully functional dependency is not there. You know what fully functional dependence means? That the attributes, they should be fully functionally dependent on the combination, on this combination, and not on any part of it. So here quantity is dependent on both.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
quantity is that the book name कितनी books हैं और कौन सा
And
order
order
number एक quantity है. But the book price is dependent only on the book name. Okay, so quantity is fully functionally dependent on this composite primary key, whereas book price is not.
Partial dependency.
Yeah, it is partial. Very good. It is partially dependent. It is only dependent on the partial key, not on the full key. Okay. So what problems? Abhijit, you can mute yourself. Thank you. Now, what problems it is going to give us? So we say that this is in first normal form, but it is not in second normal form. Okay. See now what problems it is. The explanation I've written here. The book price attribute is not fully functionally dependent on primary key, because book price attribute is functionally dependent on B name attribute. Okay, so you can see this here. Okay, that order number and book name, this is a composite key, and the quantity here is fully functionally dependent on this. See, for the fully functional dependence, I need to put another arrow here. Two arrows are put for fully functional dependence. Okay, two arrows are there for this. It's not written. I'll just modify it when I send it to you. So quantity, again, this example is very important. Quantity is fully functionally dependent on this combination, order number and book name, whereas book price is not dependent on this, because the price of the book always is related with the book name. Okay, so this will give us problems. What problems? Let's first discuss the second normal form and then we will see. So you see, the relation is said to be in second normal form if it is in one NF. Very carefully listen to this definition. It would be in 2 NF if already it is in 1 NF, and the second technical part, every non-key attribute, that is, non-key attribute means the attributes which don't form the primary key. Every non-key attribute should be fully functionally dependent on the primary key. Let's see the second point here. Now, what are the non-key attributes? Raise your hands to answer this. In this relation, what are the key attributes and what are the non-key attributes? Okay, Sakshi Yadav wants to answer. Yes, Sakshi, go ahead.
Sir, key attributes are order number and B name, and non-key attributes are quantity and B price.
Very good, very good. So Sakshi, stay with me. Now, the second part of our definition of 2NF is being violated, I suppose.
Yes, sir.
See the second part here. Just wait. Yeah. Every non-key attribute. Okay, so the non-key attributes are quantity and book price. The second part says every non-key attribute should be fully functionally dependent on the primary key and not on any subset of it. Okay. Okay. So this is violating this. B price is not fully dependent on order number and B name. So that's why this relation is not in 2NF. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now let's see how we work with it. See here. This quantity is dependent on order number and B name. That's fine. But price is only dependent on B name. Okay. Fine. So what we need to, what problems will it give? I can just discuss with you. I can just discuss. Yeah, here. Suppose I want, listen carefully, all of you. You need to maybe write this. Sakshi, stay with me. Suppose I want to add information about a new book and its price. Can I do it, Sakshi? In this relation, I want to add a new book and its price. Can I do it? I don't have the order number, I don't have the quantity. Can I add this information? You see, when we study normalization, we are always thinking of tables which should not have the insert, delete, and the update anomalies. Okay, so I'm having an insert problem. I want to insert, I've got some books with me. I purchased a few books. I want to add it into this table. I have the book name and the book price. Can I add it, Sakshi? Others can also raise their hands.
So we will not have order number and quantity about them.
Yeah, no problem. Why we should be bothered about it? Okay, let's have an answer from Prince. Sakshi, you can mute yourself. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Can we add?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
We can add
Okay,
a
fine.
book price
Fine.
with the book name.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Abhijit wants to answer. Prince, mute yourself, please.
So book price can be added, sir, but quantity will not be added because it depends on order number.
Listen carefully, all of you. I'm muting you. Listen carefully, all of you. You're not understanding what I'm saying. This is a relation, okay? And I want to add one row into this relation, but I have information only about the book name and the book price. The question simple is, can I add it here? Okay, Simran wants to answer.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
No, sir, we cannot add such record
Bye.
because, sir, we cannot leave the order number null.
Why?
Sir, because as it is a part of primary key,
Perfect.
and
Very good.
we know that
So,
primary key is not
but we
empty.
cannot insert information here, the book name and the book price, because we cannot leave order number and quantity. We can leave quantity as null, but order number, since it is a part of the primary key, and if we go by our entity integrity rule that we started, that the primary key cannot be null. Okay, so we cannot. So we have an insertion problem. Okay. Let's say now that we cancel the order number 4154. Look carefully. Simran, you will answer this question. We delete, the order number 4154 is deleted. What is the problem here, Simran?
Sir, I guess there will be no problem because there is only one.
Somebody else to answer. No, there is a problem. Be very careful about that. We have studied such problems in our offline classes. Yes, somebody else to answer. Suppose order number 4154 is deleted. So this row would be deleted. Okay. Order number is deleted. With that, we also lose the information that the book name IT, there is a book name IT with price 200, because this information would also be deleted along with it. Okay. So deletion here would result in loss of information. Okay. So because of these problems, we have the table which is not in 2NF. Now, can somebody suggest me how to bring it into 2NF? Raise your hands now. One final time for today. Yes, go ahead. You can't make this table into, you can't split it into two tables. Try it so that our problems of insert, delete, and update are not there. I think we should be able to do it. Okay, Prince is answering actively today. Yes, Prince.
Sir, can you repeat, sir, once?
I need to split this relation into two relations so that it becomes a normalized. It comes into second normal form. How that splitting should be done? That's my question. It's easy. Okay, I'll tell you the rules here. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Simran wants to answer. Yes, Simran.
So we can make two relations in which one column order number is primary key and there are two columns order number and
order number cannot be primary key. Look at the values. No. See how we do it. Just see the split now. The rules. We create a new relation from our source relation that contains the attributes that are fully functionally dependent on the concatenated primary key and the primary key itself. Okay. So one relation would be order number, book name, quantity. This is one relation. Okay. And the second relation would be the create other relation from source relation that contain the attributes that are not fully functionally dependent on the primary key and members of the primary key on which they are dependent. Okay. In other words, the relation will include the non-key attribute and the part of the concatenated primary key on which it is functionally dependent. So the second one would be, there are two tables. Look here now. First table is order number, book name and quantity. That is one table. The second table is that this book price is not dependent on both of them. It is only dependent on the book name. The second one is book name and book price. So see the split, order number, book name and quantity, one table, book name and book price, another table, and then you can backtrack and see the same problems now. The first problem was insertion. I want to add, so what I'm suggesting here is, I'll just open up maybe a blank file for you here. So I can open up this. Okay, so what I'm saying here is, one is order number, book name and quantity. This is one relation. Another relation is book name and book price. See? Okay. So now these two relations are, all our problems would be sorted. Suppose some order number is cancelled. For example, I told you order number 4154 is cancelled. Look here. I asked you order number 4154 is cancelled. Okay, fine. Cancel this row from here. Okay, this row from here. The book name and the book price are still there. The book name is IT, and I'll just write the example also. Just wait so that it is clear to you. The book name is IT and the price is 200, and the book name is IT and the quantity is, say, let's write the exact one, 30. I'm taking this example from there. So if we split it like this, if we make two relations instead of this one relation, here if I delete this order number 4154, I delete all this information. Along with that, the information that there is a book IT with price 200 also goes. Okay, but if you have a split relation like this, so if you delete this from here, the information that there is a book IT with 200 is safe with us. Then insertion, I asked you, a new book has come, say data structures. There's a new book, okay? The price as, say, 400. This is there. So whenever it needs to be used in some order number, we can put the information in this table. Okay. So tell me now, is it okay? Second normal form is okay. Very interesting, you see. Second normal form based on the idea of composite key. So if we have in a relation this combination as the composite primary key, then all other non-key attributes, they should be fully functionally dependent on both of them and not on any one of them. So the idea to split is that if any non-key attribute is partially dependent on the primary key, so for example, this book price and book name is dependent, book price is dependent on book name, this should be taken up in another relation. And this quantity is totally dependent on both of them, so this should be in one relation. So this should be the split for this relation. I hope clear. If it is clear, you can give me a raised hand, all of you. If this is clear, I think we have discussed quite a few things. We can always review it in our afternoon class. All right, all right. So I'll stop here with the second normal form. And somebody can suggest me a time for our the review problems review class. Let's say, let's ask let's ask Ankit Ranjan. Ankit, what time shall we take for this class? Ankit, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Ankit, good afternoon. Ankit, कितने बजे रखें क्लास? 3 बजे ठीक है कि 4 बजे? Okay, let's ask Prince.
Sir, actually, I have another question, sir, related to the table.
But first tell me about the class. What time shall we put the class on? जब आप लोग lunch करके relax कर लो. It's 1:30 now.
Hello.
We already we have almost 2 hours class. Another class I want to take with some problems so that we can take some PLSQ problems.
7 o'clock.
No, 7 is too late, I think. वो आपका evening time वैसे भी थोड़ा वो घर में रहता है सबके आने जाने का. I suggest a 4 o'clock time. Is it fine with all of you? Okay, I suggest a 4 o'clock time. I'm going to put it in the group. Right? You can raise your hands that you heard me. 4 o'clock, the review class time, right? And here I put it. Review class at 4 p.m. on the same link that you've joined right now, okay? I put this in the group, right? Okay. Now you can raise your hand. Somebody had problem. I forgot who it is. Yeah, Prince was there. Yes, Prince, please ask.
Sir, if the book price is denoting the sum of value of all the quantity, then it will be dependent on the composite primary key.
Book price is simply telling us that this book name has this book price. So as
No.
per our given relation, it is dependent only on the book name.
Sir, I'm asking if the book price is giving the sum of value of all the quantity of the book.
No, then obviously it is dependent on you, both of them. Yeah.
Composite key, sir.
Yeah. Then the table is in 2NF, then no problem. But the problem that we have taken according to it, it is having a problem of a partial dependency, right?
Okay, sir. Okay.
All right. Okay. Any other problem? See, I'll be putting this video on my channel today, so you can go through it. This would be the third class that we had, so 24th, 31st, and 7th. So kindly go through all this. Should be great fun and learning, PLSQL in so much detail. And normalization also is very important topic. So kindly go through this video in the evening or whenever you have time, and join me for a 4 o'clock class for some problems on PLSQL. Okay. So if there are no questions, I'll close this class. All right. Thank you.